Hi guys, welcome back to the Art of Server, and welcome to the third part in this PowerEdge R410 build series. So in today's segment, we're going to talk about CPU upgrades for the R410. If you've got one of these, and if you've bought on used market and it might have whatever processor it came with, you might want to upgrade it or just change it out for something else. Now, especially if you get one with one of the 5500 series Xeons, these machines, once they're fully updated like we did in the first episode of the series, you should be able to upgrade them to the 5600 series Xeon processors, which are more energy efficient. Now, there is a power limit in terms of how high of a TDP processor this system can support. So I believe it maxes out at 90 watts TDP. So that means some of the higher powered Xeons like the X5680 or the X5690 are not supported on this platform. Okay, now officially I believe Dell says that this platform will support up to the X5670, which is something like a 2.9 gigahertz hex core Xeon. And by the way, there are two sockets. Each can be maxed out with 6 cores, so you can get a total of 12 cores, 24 threads. Now, Dell's official statement was that the X5670 was the highest and fastest processor this platform will support. But there was also a different Xeon processor called the X5675, which happens to have the same TDP and has a slightly higher clock, like something like 3.06 gigahertz. So it's a little bit faster. They don't cost very much these days. Anything other than X5690 really is fairly cheap. Even the X5680s are starting to come down in price. But unfortunately, that's not supported here. So if you're looking to upgrade the system and you want the most compute power, I'd probably look at the X5670 for sure. But there is a chance the X5675 will also work. I have not confirmed that, but I believe that since it has the same TDP that it should work as well. And I've seen some people advertising the X5675 as a processor for the R410. So I think there's probably a very good chance that that will work. Anyway, for a platform of this generation though, my personal preference is to go energy efficient. Okay, and the reason is that the higher end processors like the, especially the X5690 or X5680, they are fairly powerful processors, no doubt. Perfectly usable even by today's standards, even though it's been probably 10 years or so. But they're just not very energy efficient at that level of compute power. And so if you really want that level of compute power, you want that much compute power, you might as well spend a little bit more money on getting a newer generation platform, such as the Sandy Ridge Ivy Bridge, or even maybe Haswell, that's starting to drop in price these days. So if you really want more compute power, I would just say, if you haven't already bought an R410, go for something a little bit newer. But if you already have an R410, I think my recommendation is just go energy efficient. Okay, these machines are perfectly fine, are very low power, even as long as you use energy efficient processors. And along those lines, my favorite processor for this generation of Dell servers, at this time at least, is the L5640. And that's what I have here in this anti-static bag. I've got a pair of L5640s, and we're going to install these today in the server. Okay, so let's go ahead and start opening this guy up and taking out the old processors, which I believe are 5500 series processors right now. So first thing, we need to disengage any cables that might be on some cable management hooks that's on the shroud, because we have to remove the shroud. So let's put this aside. And the CPUs are under these two heat sinks, so we definitely have to remove that. I've got myself a little power driver here, so we'll just go ahead and okay, so there we go. Yep, very, very old, hard and dried out thermal compound. So we're going to clean that up and take that out. Okay, so there's the processor for the first one. Let's go ahead and remove the second one as well. All right, there we are. Now, this is interesting. You notice how the processor didn't really make great contact. I mean, the thermal compound in the middle is untouched. That's kind of interesting. So we might have to be a little bit more cautious of how we apply the thermal compound and make sure that the middle of the IHS is also making contact with the heatsink. All right, so let me put these aside. We're going to clean those up. In the meantime, let me start by replacing the processors here. So yeah, let's take out these babies here. Now, if you're looking for a similar upgrade, if you want one of these L5640s, I do sell these in my eBay store, so I'll leave a link in the video description to that listing if you're interested in buying it from me. All the processors that I sell are fully tested and always cleaned. So you can see this is the way you would receive it from my inventory. It's very clean, no thermal compound residue left on it, no missing capacitors or chips or anything like that. If I find any processors like that, I usually give them to friends or sell them as a discount. Only the stuff that I consider kind of in pristine condition will be sold at my store. So, all right, so there's those processors. Let's go ahead and open this guy up. And I'll put this guy aside here. All right, so we're gonna put the L5640 in, and just be careful of the orientation of the notches. There's two notches here. They have to correspond with what you see in the socket here. Okay, and I usually like to kind of just wiggle it and make sure that it's fully seated properly. All right, and go ahead and clamp that down. All right, same thing with the second processor. Let's take this guy out. And now the orientation of the second processor is usually the opposite of the first one. So you'll notice the first one, the notches were on the right side here, and on the second processor is going to be on the left side. Okay, just wiggle it and make sure it's nicely seated. Also, the processors that, if I haven't mentioned it right, processors that I sell are not just cosmetically clean, but I actually test every individual one in one of my super micro servers and put them under load with Sysbench and make sure that there's no anomalous behavior or whatever when they're under load. And I also monitor temperatures to make sure that they're not, producing an excess amount of heat or something like that. So anyway, okay, so we got the processors in. We should apply some thermal compound, and then we're gonna put the heat sinks back on. But before we put the heat sinks back on, I really want to clean this up. This is just really, really old. I think this is the original factory thermal compound, and it's completely dried out. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, normally I would not suggest doing that on top of your server or your computer here, but for the sake of getting this on camera, I'm going to do that. But I'm going to put this, the cover here, so that any scrapings, and also, you know what, I'm going to also get a little paper towel since I have it here. Any scrapings that I take off of the heat sinks is not going to end up in the server. You definitely don't want that. All right, let me find, now as far as cleaning this, the first thing I like to do with something like this, especially when it's this kind of dried out, is just to get a plastic card and scrape off as much as you can physically. I know some people just like to take a towel and just start wiping with some alcohol, but I find that, that takes more effort, so it's just easier just to scrape this off first, and then we'll wipe it down with some alcohol. Yeah, this stuff is pretty dried out. Alright, so as you can see, a lot of that has already come off, and we'll clean that up with some alcohol in a second here, but let me also finish scraping off this. Alright, so I think that gets most of the old thermal compound off, and I'll throw that in the trash. I've got another clean towel here, and I'm going to put some alcohol on it. So this stuff here, that probably might be a little hard to find considering the situation we're in right now. Here in the United States, the coronavirus is running rampant in some areas, and people have been buying things like the antiseptic alcohol and Clorox and other things. So they might be a little bit hard to find, but anyway. Okay, so just go ahead and wipe this down. So we'll have a very clean surface to work with, and similarly here. Now I usually also clean the processors, but again, because the processors that I just showed you installed in here came from my inventory, they're already fully cleaned. But sometimes you'll see if I do processor installs, I'm also cleaning the processor, and that's normally my routine. But in this case, since they're already cleaned, we can forego that step. Okay, so no droppings of old thermal compound in the server, so I'll go ahead and take the cover off again. Alright, so now we're going to apply some new thermal compound on the processors before we install, and I'm using this stuff here. This is Protronics Series 7 thermal paste. It's not the best thermal paste, not even the marketing is all that great. It works really well though. I mean, it's, yeah, if you are doing competitive overclocking, whatever, this might not be the product to use, but for a low power processor like this, you're not really going to generate that much heat, and this stuff is just really cheap, so I always have a tube of this around because I'm always testing stuff. The processors, by the way, when these processors are being tested, this is what I use, right? So anyway, we'll apply some of this. Now, there are many ways to apply a thermal compound, and I'm not saying that my way is the only way, but I have a preference for spreading the thermal compound. If you've seen any of my other videos where I'm upgrading a processor, I like to manually spread the thermal compound. And the reason for that is that I find there's just a lot of variables in terms of how well this spreads. So a lot of people put a couple of dots and then apply pressure on the heatsink to spread that out, and generally that works okay. But I find that, you know, if you're using a thermal compound that's maybe a little bit thicker, or for example with the Westmere Xeons, these don't really require a lot of pressure. And so, you know, with less pressure and possibly with a thicker thermal paste, now this is not very thick, but if you know, whatever one you happen to use, it might not spread as well as you'd like it to. And so just to kind of work around those type of variables, you know, the technique that I use where I basically spread the thermal paste with a little card pretty much works with every, you know, viscosity of thermal paste. And so I just go ahead and spread this out on the top layer of the IHS, and this pretty much guarantees me that I'm going to have the thermal compound fully spread out on the processor here. So, and you know, I used to be the person who would just put a couple of dots, like a pea-sized dot in the middle, and just press down on the processor. And I just find that, you know, when I took things apart, sometimes it was great and sometimes it wasn't. And And you know, if you're watching my channel, you're probably a server enthusiast, right? So why not show our servers a little bit more love and just spend a few minutes here spreading out the thermal compound and making sure that no matter how you apply it, it's going to have full coverage. And that's why I do what I do. All right, so there we got it. And let's see here. I'm just cleaning off my card off camera here, but all right. So we're pretty much ready to install the heatsinks over those processors. All right. Now these are square heatsinks, so you know, I don't think most people will make this mistake, but if you're fairly new and even if you're just, say, like you're not even used to building normal home PCs and stuff like that, you know, make sure you have this, because it's square, you can potentially install it this way. And I've seen that happen, okay? It's happened, of course not to me, but it's happened. And so you want to make sure that you install it so the airflow can actually flow right through it, okay? If you install it this way, you're probably going to have heating problems. All right, so I think that's down, and all right, and then of course tighten the screws down. I love this little kind of driver drill thing, and it has a clutch setting, so you can have it clutch out at a fairly low torque rate, so that way you don't over tighten stuff. So I usually set it at a 4. You can't buy these anymore. They used to sell these at Home Depot, but I can't find these. This is a 4-volt system. It's kind of rare. It's not one of those 18-volt systems or 12-volt systems. It's very low voltage. You know, I don't think they were very popular, and so they discontinued it. But I happened to find this on sale at Home Depot once, and I bought it, and I actually really like it for stuff like this. I wouldn't use this in the garage. You know, like in my garage, I've got other power tools for working on cars and other home improvement type of projects. But for computer stuff where you really don't need a lot of torque, this is actually pretty nice. All right, so I will do it in kind of a crosshatch pattern to kind of even things out. Okay, and you can hear that clutch out. All right. All right, there we go. So that's done. Same thing on the second. All right, final tightening. All right, there we go. So we're done there. We need the fan shroud back on. Okay, where did I put that? All right, here it is. Okay. Man, this is a little bit dusty in here. I'm gonna just kind of wipe it down a little bit, get some of this dust out of here. I don't know if you'll be able to see that in the camera, but it's accumulated some dust in here. Alright, so this goes in this way, and where you see the little light blue dots, they have a little hook that should go over the fan wall here. Let's see, why is that not going down? Oh, okay, there's some cables there. Alright, so that's all there is to it, and I'll put this cable back on the cable management hook over there. Alright, so that's all there is for today's video. We upgraded the processors to L5640. Again, if you'd like to do the same upgrade for your R410, check out the listing on my eBay store, which I'll leave a link in the description for you. Alright guys, so that's it for today's video. Hope this helps you guys out if you're doing your own upgrade on an R410. In the following videos, we're going to start installing an operating system on this. I haven't really decided what we're going to do with this machine yet. Maybe as a FreeNAS controller, I don't know yet. I'm thinking about it. But if you guys have any suggestions or you'd like to see something in particular, leave some comments for me, and let you guys drive the discussion here. All right. Thanks a lot for watching, and remember to give me a thumbs up if you liked it, all right? And be sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel. All right. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.